Welcome back. A new study by the Wits Centre on African Philanthropy and Social Investment has found that non-profit organizations are among South Africa's biggest employers of young people, but their contribution is often overlooked. Researchers say gaps in national data mean the true impact of the non-profit sector on youth employment is largely underestimated. To unpack the findings, we are joined by Research Associate Wycliffe Ouma. Mr. Ouma, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning. So the recent Wits study highlights the significance about this being overlooked, the role of non-profit organizations in youth employment. What prompted this research focus?
Thank you so much. I think just for a bit of clarity, the study that is partly in South Africa is also taking place in 16 other countries in the continent.
Right.
And this was just a simple observation that youth employment in Africa and specifically South Africa in this case remains extremely high. And that's because many of these young people struggle to get the first opportunity in the labor market. But when we look at it closely, we find that young people actually obtain work experience, training, exposure to economic activities. We also find that the nonprofit sector plays a much larger role in this case than what the public debate usually recognizes. So that's the background to what prompted the Wits Business School. I mean, the Center on African Philanthropy and the Wits Business School to undertake this role, because we know that nonprofit sector contributes to employment, but we now want to understand what are the structural issues that we can understand through research to help elevate or to optimize what the nonprofit sector can do in employment. And a case in point, the study of South Africa already elevates that. It shows how the sector contributes to youth employment.
Certainly. And I mean, speaking on these challenges, what do you think are the key setbacks or the key challenges in accurately capturing data on non-profit sector employment? Because that certainly then does contribute to the larger employment numbers that we would have in the region as a whole.
Yeah, like I said earlier, a lot of the jobs that we found through this research, through the nonprofit sector, are highly entry point, job opportunities. And again, most of them are short-term in nature. And I think as a result, the data capturers may be overlooking all these issues that pertain to where people start as they go through the chain of getting what the labor market recognizes as proper employment in many cases. So I think it's in, as the research says, it's transition in many ways in the majority. But that should not obscure the fact that there are still jobs and there are still job opportunities that help to elevate the lives and livelihoods of the young people.
So you speak of these jobs being either short-term or project-based. What then are the implications of this for youth employment stability?
Well, I think that's where our research now comes in, because there are many players in the nonprofit sector. And nonprofit sector is, the way we define it in this research is that any organization that is not for profit, or that is not profit oriented, or does not have, in economics term, redistributive characteristic of whatever the outcome of their investments or their endeavors are, we call them non-profit sector. And so going back to your question, how do when the sector produces certain employment opportunities to young people, then the larger economic system maybe is not recognizing that these opportunities are really, really important and helping the young people at the starting point in many cases. But for us to understand how to make the employment not to become a short term, to become a long term, then research needs to let us know what are the strategies that needs to be put in place. How can we elevate what already the nonprofit is doing? We know that the funding structure, the short-termness of the grants that they get is what makes this. So when we understand through research that the sector already is capable of providing dignified and fulfilling work, then now proper investment can be made in order to elevate those opportunities and make them longer-term job opportunities.
In elevating those opportunities, are your studies finding that there is sufficient collaboration between non-profit organizations as well as policymakers in order to improve on the quality and the sustainability of those youth employment opportunities?
Yeah, most of our results currently is preliminary. We have done in the 17 countries where South Africa is one of them. We have done, the survey, quantitative surveys to understand from the young people themselves and non-profit themselves as well, the type of jobs and how they bridge the gap of unemployment in the continent. So what we are finding largely is telling that while the sector is struggling with the with the resources to ensure that there's longer-term job opportunities, there are cases, and if the policymakers and all the other part players are to come together to understand what are the best approaches that can be used to elevate this conversation. So one of the things that we are doing in this research, it's a massive research taking place in 17 countries, is to not just do it as a typical academic research and leave it to be used by the academic community. We are involving each and every part player, all the stakeholders. So for instance, we are going to be having, when we started the research, for instance, we involved the policymakers, the nonprofit sector themselves, the youth themselves, to help define what do you consider as a job, and what do you consider a job that really is dignified and fulfilling to your needs, because our research is interested in how does the nonprofit sector be capable of providing dignified and fulfilling work. So the youth did tell us, but at the same time, the policymakers, when we were designing the tools to go and carry out this research, they told us that in terms of the policy, you need to frame your questions in this way. And as a result, we already now have some preliminary results where South Africa has already indicated that the sector has the ability and is already producing jobs. And more than that, we are currently going to disseminate or to validate some of these results with the same constituencies that we involved at the beginning of starting the research. For instance, we are going to have the youth themselves to really tell us, does the research that we have done resonate to what is the practicality of their lives. So we are going to have this validation workshop in Senegal in the next 2 weeks. And we are inviting government officials, policymakers, nonprofits themselves, and also, the private sector, because we really have to get to the point where we bridge the gap. Not that just the types of jobs provided by the nonprofit sector is different from the type of jobs that is, typically provided by the for-profit sector or the private sector itself. So it's a holistic, kind of research which involves all the part players, all the constituencies involved in, elevating the problem of youth unemployment.
Most certainly, and I think what you're raising as a very important point is that neglect that we are seeing in NPOs being disconnected from that employment policy discussions that are often seen with government. And you can imagine how much more better we could see the integration into the national economic planning when we do know the contributions of NPOs, especially when it comes to employment. Thank you so much, Wycliffe, just for unpacking the study for us. It certainly has been enlightening. Thank you for joining us this morning.